Come on, Billy. Everyone knows Atlantis wasn't 12,000 years ago. It was in the 1800s or something.
Atlantis 10,000 years ago? Even I'm not that dumb.
Come on, G, you can't contain this. You're gonna sink like Atlantis.
Billy Carson is fake news, the fakest news. Jason has proven that.
After careful analysis of Jason's data sets, I agree with you, Billy. Don't debate him.
The cat's out of the bag, Billy. Jason's data set proves you're wrong about Atlantis.
Billy, even I can see that the Atlantis narrative isn't dated correctly. Hear Jason out, man.
Hey bro, you running from this debate isn't a good look for your research. Just debate him already.
Billy, don't be scared to debate, man. I'll have you guys on the podcast.
I wasn't so sure about this Archaix thing, but AIX is certainly worth looking into.
I'm most impressed that Jason is not going to tell you something. He's going to show you.
Archaix shows us if you record enough facts, the answers just stare you in the face.
A man who knows the facts is unafraid to joust with contrary opinions. That's Jason.
I can't have that dude on my show. You know how many guys I've had on here who are running from that dude? Be a mess.
Jason says being wrong gets us closer to being right.
You got to break free or die trying, guys.
Archaix showed me how to see if there was a tater in them onions.
Listen, Archaix isn't one guy against the Matrix. That's dumb. No, it's a family of souls waking up.
If I've learned anything since finding Archaix, if something is true somewhere, it's probably true everywhere.
Jason said if it's true, we can see it from multiple different vantage points.
So I broke pattern and went up there and slapped that guy. Total pattern break.
If you get stumped, you got to break pattern.
Jason says you don't need to know how to read, you need to know how to think. I think that's where I went wrong.
Jason figured it out. People are smart and they can decide for themselves if something is true or not.
No, I don't have anything to hide. I just don't want Jason anywhere near my accounting files.
There's a bunch of us who don't listen to Archaix. We signed a different deal. I think it's AIX or something.
Oh, let's get that audio check done real quick. See how things are going. My audio should be pretty clear. Then again, I've been fooled before. All right. Glad you like my intro. Thanks, Jamie Robbins and company. And I can't even believe I'm so far behind. I ain't even put on my new hat. No, I got to put my new hat on. All right. So, this is a promised Enoch 2 video. But there's a lot going on in the world, and we're going to address that in Archaix this week. As a matter of fact, you guys know Barry, at least my Archaix veterans, you know Barry, because Archaix, although it was my passion, it didn't begin that way. I'm pretty deeply involved in my office project, and Barry is taking the reins on that most of the time because I'm preoccupied. But Barry's from the UK, from Manchester. He used to be a police officer. Well, Barry has set aside what he's been presently doing and has been taking screenshots of all the stuff going on in the UK and by extension Europe. So we're going to be doing a video. Barry's never been on my channel. He's never wanted to be a front man. He's never wanted to. That's not his forte. but this is his passion. It's his interest. This is the homeland. So, you know, he's an American citizen now, but he's still British at heart. So we're going to be talking about what's going on in the UK with Barry sometime this week. Those of you new to my channel, you have no idea who he is, but he's been around for a while. Well, actually, he's been around since before I even had a YouTube channel. We were working together. All right. So the original Book of Enoch, video, the link is in the description box. This isn't a continuum of that video. That video was closed. It's done because the Ethiopic text that was found in Africa, actually multiple copies, is a different Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch, which the scholars call the Ethiopic text, found in Africa, it's basically the same subject matter, but it's written from, you know, different perspectives. It has different data in it. It was very curious. Well, we have recognition of the Phoenix phenomenon. We've got vapor canopy. We got all kinds of clues in the Book of Enoch about things that we discuss in Archaix. So it's really interesting, very interesting to find that in the Slavonic Enoch, you're gonna see the history of it here. But in the Slavonic Enoch, which is the Russian version, which is descended from a different line of preservationists, it came from Alexandria also. But remember, I've told you guys in prior presentations, when the Alexandrian libraries was destroyed multiple times, each time very important copies of text were secreted away into private collections into Africa, the Middle East, Arabia, all into Europe. Some of them disappeared to the Americas by ship. So we're going to be talking about a different Book of Enoch. It's called Slavonic Enoch. The title is the Book of the Secrets of Enoch. We're going to be going through a translation that was found it was lost in the archives of the Belgrade Public Library, found in the late 1800s. It had been lost for 12 centuries. So, also, there are changes in Archaix. You guys know I've been doing a lot more Archaix rewinds. Edited down versions of older, longer videos from the past that have very key elements that need to be brought back to the table. Many of you have been enjoying those Archaix rewind videos. So they're going to continue because when you got almost 800 videos, no one's going back to watch those. They don't even know how to find them. So we're bringing the important ones back, like the recent Anunnaki videos. We have videos on vapor canopy. We have a lot of videos that people have just forgotten about. They're over 3 years old. Some of them are 4 years old. Bringing those back. Also, prior guests, not only guests on Archaix, but podcasts that I've been on and they've never been on Archaix, as well as a whole bunch of new faces. Some of them not new to you guys because you've been following the research. But I have a very compelling list of future guests who have reached out to me pursuant to my latest request. Pretty good. I'm going to be interviewing a lot of people on my channel, basically allowing them, smaller channels, to put their information out there and see how the community responds to it. What do you guys think about this data? This is what we're going to do. We're not going to denigrate them. We're not going to. I attack giants. I don't care about these little channels. Some of them have some profound information. I started off as a little channel and somebody gave me a shot. Yeah. So that's what it's all about. Now, I will say we're going to have some OGs back too. We got a video with Autodidact. Well, I don't even know if Autodidact is going to be in it because I haven't looked at my emails in a couple hours. I don't know if he's respond. But Paul Cook, extraordinaire researcher, traveler. Hey, Paul Cook's coming back with Martin Leakey. We're gonna be in the same video. I've invited Autodidactic. All four of us just chop it up, talk about all the latest discoveries, what they mean, try to make some sense in this. We're gonna Sherlock Holmes this shit. This is what it's all about. This is what the community is about. And we're We're going to do it without the giants. We're going to do it in spite of the giants. We're going to do it because this is where the real information is going to be conveyed. Not that Facebook educated BS, hide your tooth under the pillow type data. We're not entertaining that. We're grown-ups in Archaix. We are beyond the fantasy, adult fantasy BS. So we're gonna be have a lot of people that have never been to on Archaix will be coming. I will be interviewing them. Some of them I disagree with, but it doesn't even matter because we can always find some commonalities. We always can. So, let's see. Okay, another video you have coming up. Let me look at this list. The closing ceremony for the 2012 Olympics is important. I still have to do that video. Remember, the opening ceremony was all about the resets and the Phoenix phenomenon, cleverly veiled. It was all there. And in sequential order. It was genius how they did it. As well as the 2020 breaking of the first seal. It was all there. So we're going to see what the closing ceremony shows. Also, you have a really compelling video coming up on the mysteries of Pliny the Elder. You're going to love that video. Most of you have no idea what that man wrote about 2,000 years ago. Let's see. Oh, man, you got to see this. So, one of my moderators, would you please post the link to Chronicon on Podia? The new edited Chronicon. Shiva Shampoo was one of the editors for a long time. I had people checking my math, a three-person team. All is international. I think one in the States, one in the Maldives Islands, and one in Europe. And they worked together for like 18 months, put this together. It's amazing. Okay, you can go to Podia and you can get my Chronicon. My Chronicon makes sense of all the charts, makes sense of world history, puts all the mysteries of the world into their proper perspective. Chronicon is amazing, looking at the mathematical construct that we call history. But somebody, out of the kindness of their heart, downloaded my Podia, my Chronicon. They ordered Chronicon, and then they had 2 copies printed up and bound into books. They kept a book for themselves, and then they mailed me one. This is the new Chronicon you have access to right there. It's huge. It's huge. It's amazing. This is Chronicon, well over 1,000 pages. All typeset, edited, looks really good. I've written 27 books, guys, but I've never written a book as large and comprehensive as Chronicon. This is Chronicon. It's huge. Man, it's awesome. Massive. Every time period going back. This is the historical record. This is the Archaix model. Starts in 5239 BC. Why? Because we don't have any texts that go back further. Shows all the ancient calendars, how they all coalesce. This is it. This is what it's all about. This person sent this to me, didn't charge me a dime, just out of the kindness of their heart. They gave me a hard copy of my own Chronicon, the final edited version. I was so impressed with this. Kind of got emotional. It's awesome. The back, now you know that my bibliography is in the text. Whenever you look up a date and you see some compelling information, it's right there where that data came from. But interestingly, the back of this Chronicon has a whole section of amazing notes for all different time periods, just some fascinating factoids all throughout here. Anyway, that's Chronicon. Wanted to show that to you. Before we get on with this presentation, that was Chronicon. Here is, I don't know what color that is. I have a real problem with colors. Hold it up to the light. It's like lavender. From your perspective, I can see on the screen it doesn't look that way, but from when I hold it up against the light, it looks, I don't know what this color is. This is a 256 gigabyte drive. It's 3.1 speed. It's fast transfer speed. It still takes 4 hours to upload. This is the new Phoenix Great Pyramid Blackout Drive. This is the new one Big John just Big John just made quite a bit of them. But this is the new drive, 132 videos, 250 hours. It's massive, but it's 100% of the Archaix data on the Phoenix phenomenon. Everything's in there from all my videos on the Phoenix. And because the Great Pyramid is intrinsically connected to the Phoenix phenomenon, and you guys already understand why, all my Archaix veterans know why, we had to put those two playlists together. Also, the Archaix podcasts that were done on other people's channels, those videos were harvested and put on that drive. Videos that are not even on my channel. Also, Archaix TV videos that concern the Phoenix phenomenon that were done with like the paranormies that we can't put on YouTube, and they're all on that drive as well. So I wanted to make that announcement. Also, all the chart packs. You guys have been blowing up my emails with these chart packs, so I just put the links back in the description box. About 2 months ago, I quit putting all my links in the description box and started trying to tell people just go to archaix.com. Just go to archaix.com. But it seems like a lot of people don't go to archaix.com, where I have a massive link index where you can go to anything you want. So I'm going to start putting these back into the description box. It seems to be a lot of free stuff in the links down there. And finally, new Archaics Academy lessons are about to drop. 20 of them have already dropped. I know some of you are excited about getting that diploma and that coin, and I'm going to try and make that happen. But we'll also have a couple of videos I'm going to be doing with those who've signed up with Archaics Academy, as well as test sheets. Oh yes, you're going to be tested. Don't think you're not. But other than that, that's all my announcements. I feel like I just read from the back of a cereal box. All right, we got plenty of people present. Also, for many of you don't want to order the individual drives, you want to do away with all that. It takes me a long time to put these drives together, but they're very organized. But for those who just want 100% of all the Archaics data, over 100,000 images, over 800 videos, all the videos from our Archaics YouTube, all the videos from Archaics TV as well, tiny head videos, all of them, as well as all the videos from podcasts that I've done as a guest on other people's. Every bit of that takes 15 hours to upload onto a 4 terabyte drive. I'm not going to go out and buy a bunch of 4 terabyte drives, but my P.O. box address is in the description box. And if you have a 4 terabyte drive or larger, it's got to be 4 terabytes or 5 or larger, 4 or larger. If you have a terabyte drive that's 4 terabytes or larger, or two terabyte drives, just go and send me an email. We'll talk about it. But it literally takes 15 hours to make a copy of all the Archaic. It's a tremendous amount of research, just like all the things I'm about to show you now. When I say everything from Archaix, I'm talking about all the charts, handwritten charts, computer charts. I'm talking about every citation of a book I've ever shown on Archaics. All the images I've ever shown in all my videos on Archaics. I'm talking about a massive amount of information. It's a lot. It's a lot, guys. I'm talking about 900 and something videos when you add Archaics TV with it. So anyway, I'm willing to do that for you, because every night, all I got to do is I got a backup laptop. I have a laptop that I do data transfers on, because I will never take a thumb drive or a data drive and upload it into my home computer or into my principal laptop if it comes from someone else. I'll never do that. I always use it. I have this backup laptop where I will investigate things, because I'm never going to let anybody send me a virus I can upload or something. It's not going to happen. So anyway, that's it. This is one of mine. I've got multiple copies of this because I keep copies of all my stuff everywhere. But if you have one, this is a 4 terabyte drive from Best Buy. Best Buy sells these. But anywhere, you can email me, and we'll go from there. But I'm willing to do it. But I'm only gonna be able to do one at a time. Every night when I go to sleep, just turn it on, wake up, and I have one more done. Thank you, Tiger Turtle. She sent me this book, Japanese Fairy Tales. I'm going to get into that. I haven't even taken out the bag yet. Another thing I'm reading is from 1897. This is Emanuel Swedenborg, Apocalypse Revealed. Swedenborg was my style of guy, out of the box thinker. He's a Christian mystic. Really good material. I have like 19 or 20 books that break down the book of Revelation, all written in the 1800s. And I'm going through them. I've showed you guys before. I got a whole shelf of them. Show and tell is over. Book Tree Press in San Diego provides a fascinating copy also from the year 1897. This is it. This was found in the archives of the Belgrade Public Library. This is just a cheap cover over a very important text from 1897. This is a translation from the Slavonic. 1896. That's translation. Right there. Oxford Press. W.R. Morfill. Original, translated into English by R.H. Charles. You guys know R.H. Charles, Book of Enoch, R.H. Charles, Enema Elish, 7 Babylonian tablets of creation. So yeah, published in Oxford and Edinburgh. So let's get to it. Let's begin this presentation. This is the book. It's small, but it's got some really, really salient points in here. It's got some really good stuff we're gonna be going through. All right. All right. Restless Errant. I'll look at that. USB duplicator and sanitizer. I'll look for that. Meanwhile, I'll just fulfill orders while I'm sleeping. I mean, I've tried multiple copies of these large files, and all it does is slow them down. You do 3 or 4 at a time, and they just slow down. You may as well just do 1 at a time to maximize. My laptops have half a terabyte processors. It's amazing. I got half a terabyte of memory in it, so RAM. It's just the files are so damn big. Yeah, you got to understand. Well, when I'm talking about these drives, I'm not talking about just my videos. I'm not just talking about 100,000 images of pictures that all came out of all these books have been photographed by Big John. Big John's photographed all these. He's photographed all the books in my other studio. He's photographed all these in these boxes, Jewish encyclopedias, all these pictures. But not only that, Martin Leakey and I had exchanged about 20,000 pictures as well. I got his 20,000. He got about 14 or 15,000 from me from the Archaics library. We traded out. Danny of the Unfuckers group. Also, she and I did some trading on image files. You guys get the advantage of that. But also, what you don't realize now is that I have PDFs of the majority of all these books. Also, I have 20,000 PDFs of old books. Yeah, so all that's being transferred. When I say 100% of the Archaics information, I'm talking about all that. And 20,000 PDF books. And a lot of these books are 100 to 600 pages each. Man, it's a massive amount. You can't even go through that much material in your lifetime. You just can't. But I'm a preservationist, and I believe that this data needs to be preserved because it doesn't matter if 99.9% of all these drives and thumb drives come to nothing. All it takes is one person to save it through the next reset, and this is how information is preserved. Just like Beowulf. One copy of the Anglo-Saxon poem Beowulf survived the church purgings. And it's the reason why we have Beowulf today. Yeah, there's so many stories like that. All right. I'm going to share my screen and get straight into it. And I'm getting bad. I'm getting fast at that. All right. Let's see here. So I just showed you this, actually just showed you this. The Book of the Secrets of Enoch, translated from the Slavonic. Let's go into it. Let's see what they're talking about. This book has had a peculiar history. For more than 1,200 years, it has been unknown, save in Russia, where acquaintance with it goes several centuries back. See, 12, that'd be 800, several centuries would be 300. So we're talking about, this is a Dark Ages era text. Further, by its present name, it was never known in any literature save the Slavonic. At the bottom we read, and yet the book was much read in many circles in the first 3 centuries of the church, and has left more traces of its influence than many a well-known book. So from the academic perspective, they have found traces of influence from this text that has bled over into many other early Christian texts. That's pretty interesting. That kind of shows provenance, that this is very old. The Slavonic Enoch in its present form was written somewhere about the beginning of the Christian era. Its author or final editor was a Hellenistic Jew, and the place of its composition was Egypt. Now, I underlined Hellenistic Jew, and I put redactor here because this is what we found with the Book of Revelation. This is what we found with the New Testament. Even much of the Old Testament, we have the Jewish scribes coming in, translating older text and literally changing the flavor of those texts. And in subsequent translations, it even becomes assumed that the originals were in Hebrew when they weren't. All roads are leading in the ancient world when it comes to texts, when it comes to belief systems. Everything's going back to the Greeks. Book of Revelation was originally written in Greek. We even find evidence that the Samaritan Chronicle was a copy from the Greek, an older Greek version. We have the Septuagint, which is Greek. So remember, Jesus didn't walk around speaking Hebrew. There is no evidence at all anywhere in the gospel that Jesus taught in Hebrew, spoke in Hebrew, did any of that stuff at all. Greek was the language of the day. All right, so although the very knowledge that such a book ever existed was lost for probably 1,200 years, it nevertheless was much used by both Christian and heretic in the early centuries. It will be clear from the evidence in section 4 that they are translations from a lost Greek original. The manuscripts may be thus classified. Okay, guys. Here we have, I've been showing you guys the zodiac was Greek. The Vedic astrologers admit in their writings they got the zodiac from the Greeks. Ancient Egypt admits they had no zodiac whatsoever until the Greeks entered Egypt. Yeah, the oldest Egyptian zodiac is Dendera, but Dendera was rebuilt by the Greeks, and it was the Greek Ptolemies that built the zodiac of Dendera. Now, so such a hypothesis is necessary owing to the above Enochic quotations, which appear in the testaments of the 12 patriarchs. I've read those. Part of the Apocrypha is pretty good. It's the pseudepigraphical library. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there is a hardback book you can get called The Forgotten Books of Eden and the Lost Books of the Bible. These are the apocryphal and pseudepigraphical texts that are attached to the Old and New Testaments. These are books that did not make the canon. All right. For the fact that the latter work was written in Hebrew obliges us to conclude that its author or authors drew upon Hebrew originals in the quotations from Enoch. I have not attempted in the present work to discriminate the portions derived from the Hebrew originals. For such a task, we have not sufficient materials, and what we have, moreover, have not been preserved with sufficient accuracy. In 1896, when this English introduction was written, it was not in vogue to challenge the Hebrew originals. But since the 1890s, scholars have dissected the Old and the New Testament, and they have made many amazing discoveries. And that is, the more that we research the biblical material, the more that we learn that the originals were in other languages, not Hebrew. Somebody came around in history, made a bunch of copies, and then claimed that those were originals. The Hebrew editions of the Old and New Testament are not as old as the Greek versions. In fact, Jesus, the apostles, and even the Apostle Paul cite the Greek Septuagint text anytime they quote Old Testament Bible verses. They do not cite an older Hebrew version. This is widely known, and it's always been acknowledged by the church that the Greek Septuagint text was the one Jesus quoted. This guy is literally admitting we just don't have sufficient, what we have isn't sufficiently accurate, and we don't even have sufficient materials to even conclude that the oldest writings were in Hebrew. That's particularly damaging. We may, therefore, with reasonable certainty, assign the composition of our text to the period 1 through 50 AD, Anno Domini. The date of the Hebrew original underlying certain sections of our text is, as we have already seen, pre-Christian. The author was a Jew who lived in Egypt, probably in Alexandria. He belonged to the Orthodox Hellenistic Judaism of his day. For those of you who don't know what it means, Hellenistic means Greek. Even as far back as the Trojan War, they were the Hellenes. So, Alexandria had a massive population of Jews in the 2nd and 1st century BC, all the way up to the late 1st century AD. Massive population, but the culture was Greek. The rulers was Greek. Greek was the international tongue of the Mediterranean world. And we conclude this introduction with the book of the Secrets of Enoch, the son of Arid. This is Jared in the 10 patriarchs listed in the genealogy in the book of Genesis. His name, Arid, right here, literally means to descend in Hebrew. Remember, Arid was named that because in the chronology, he appears in 3439 BC, which is exactly 1,200 years before the Great Flood, which is precisely 432,000 turnings of the stars before the flood. Arid is found in Genesis because when the Jews were in Babylonian captivity and they were reading the cuneiform records of the pre-flood world, they learned that the Anunna descended from the mountain in the 456th year before the flood. That's our 3439 BC. So in their narrative, they had the father of Enoch, who bore testimony against the Watchers who descended Mount Ardon, same as the Anunna, who followed Enki. They named the name the father Jared. Jared just means to descend. It's all the patriarchs are named after conditions, phenomena, and populations of the pre-flood world. I've shown this in prior presentations. Like Adam, there was never an Adam. In cuneiform, in Babylonian cuneiform, it's very simple. Adamu is the name for mankind. All right, so we're done with that. Let's exit out this file. I want to check my chat because I've been running my mouth. All right. As soon as I looked at the chat, I saw AM1. AM1, get ready, man. I'm getting a lot of people to come on my channel, man. You need to be one of them. All right. Everything's good. Let me get smoking. Monica Pharaoh, how you doing? Driving that tractor. All right. Let's get into this text. This begins, we're no longer in the introduction. This begins somewhat of an exegetical analysis of the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, lost for over 1,200 years, but ultimately it had passed through Byzantine, Eastern Orthodox Christian text. Ultimately, its origin was in the Alexandrian Library of Northern Africa. Its preservation and dissemination was probably because most of the people in the book business, in publishing, all the scriveners were Jews. And publishing, go figure. So that's how this text was preserved. It came to pass when I had spoken to my sons, these men summoned me and took me on their wings and placed me on the clouds. And lo, the clouds moved. And again, going higher, I saw the air, and going still higher, I saw the ether, and they placed me in the first heaven. And they showed me a great sea, greater than the earthly sea. Enoch was taken to heaven. And in the narrative, Enoch was basically abducted from the earth, taken high into the sky. He goes through the clouds, and beyond the clouds, he encounters an ocean that's even more vast than the sea below. This is in the story of Enoch. An ocean in the sky kind of makes you wonder why astronauts are trained underwater. And they brought before my face the elders and the rulers of the orders of the stars. These would be archons. And they showed me 200 angels, which means messengers, who rule the stars and their heavenly service. And they fly with their wings and go round all the stars as they float. This is what he sees when he's abducted from the earth and he's taken to the throne. He passes through the sky, he goes through the clouds, he goes through a darkness and comes across a vast ocean above. When he passes into that ocean, he comes across the thrones. These are the stars. Let's see. Okay. Now that's the first heaven. He gets to the second heaven where there's darkness, and there I saw the prisoners suspended, reserved and waiting the eternal judgment. What just happened, guys? Weren't we told that the angels who kept not their first estate had been condemned to hell and they were sent in the underworld? Weren't we told that in the third day after Jesus was crucified, Jesus descended into hell and went in there and talked to the spirits of the damned? Weren't we told this? Yes, we were. So what is being conveyed? Is there a whole different body of rebel messengers from the ancient past that had to be dealt with? I'm going to tell you yes. In this text, there are two different bodies of angels that had committed a trespass, according to the Enochian records. And they weren't underground. These were suspended in the sky. Remember my dark satellite research. This is very important for you to understand. The dark satellite is not an intruder planet. It's not an exoworld. It is a prison of the stars, and it is suspended in the sky. And the dark satellite is able to open and release some of these into our world at specific times. It was so important to ancient humanity to know these times that they mapped them and mapped they what? And we call that map a calendar. One of the calendars that maps the dark satellite also has prophecies attached to it concerning an invasion of demons in the last days. That calendar is called the Mayan long count. And before 2012, when everybody else in the world was saying that the Mayan long count calendar was going to end in 2012, I already had books published. In one of them, before 2012, I was explaining to anybody who would read my material that 2012 is not the end of the Mayan long count. In 1952, the academics made a critical mistake, and they factored a 365.24 day of modern usage upon an old system that only recognized a 360-day year. And when you make the necessary correction, the Mayan long count ends in the exact same year that Douglas Vogt of the Diehold Foundation believes is going to be the next pole shift, 2046. I also have books about 2046. My Archaix veterans already know what Nostradamus says about 2046. And David Davidson, engineer who studied the Great Pyramid, what he says about the pyramid geometrical timeline and how our world's own motion stops in 2045. So here it is. Enoch is taken into the second heaven, and he's shown this great darkness in the sky beyond an ocean above the firmament. And there he sees prisoners, but they're suspended. And they're being held in reserve for eternal judgment. And these angels were gloomy in appearance, more than the darkness of the earth. And they unceasingly wept every hour. And I said to the men who were with me, why are these men continually tortured? And the men answered me, these are they who apostatized from the Lord, who obey not the commandments of God and took counsel of their own will and transgressed together with their prince and have been already confined to the second heaven. And I felt a great pity for them. Below he calls them angels. Now, I want to draw something to your attention. When Abraham was on the plain of Mamre, he was visited by angels, but the angels appeared as regular humans. When the angels entered Sodom and warned Lot that, hey, God is going to destroy the city, you need to get out with your family, your daughters, your wife, and all that, the men of the city wanted to lay with them. They must have been very attractive men, wanted to have sex with them. That means, in the context of angel, we have admissions from texts that are 2,000 years old that in the ancient mindset, an angel of God is indistinguishable from a human. That's pretty compelling. It begins to make sense of a lot of things. like the Tower of Babel story being a veiled threat of humans outside the construct, looking at humans inside the construct, building an apparatus that would blow open the construct. And therefore, the Tower of Babel becomes a veiled threat, not an actual historical event. We also have Genesis the Genesis chapters 1 through 3, the creation story. Well, there's two of them there, really. But in the creation epos, we have in the beginning, God created man in his own image. In his own image created he him. In his image created he them. It gives you a lot of detail that humans were made in the express image of God. That's pretty interesting. In the Old Testament, we have angels appearing to talk to prophets, and they look just like ordinary people. So, in Archaix, we like to remove the mythological denominations. We like to remove all these particulars that inject fantasy where it doesn't belong. We're literally dealing with an adjustment bureau body of people. Humans are inside the construct, but there are other humans on the outside of the construct that can freely come in and out. And there's another body of humans that have been put in suspended animation somewhere, reserved for a future deal. Who knows? It could be the whole. What was that movie when they put criminals in cryo chambers to be released into the future? It was a still Sylvester Stallone movie. You don't know. We are reading a text that's telling a story through primitive frames of reference. That's what we are. So when it keeps saying men, but it's talking about angels. So that's something to check out. Now, in the commentary notes beneath the text, R.H. Charles talks about the New Testament, 2 Peter 2:4, talking about how God had committed the prisoners, the angels who kept not their first estate, the angels that sinned as here to pits of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. These prisoners are the angels that kept not their first estate and are reserved under darkness unto the judgment of the great day, the day of the Lord. Isn't that interesting? You got to pay attention to the particulars. The day of the Lord. In the very beginning, the first unit of measurement in Genesis, the alpha text of Scripture, is an evening and the morning was the first day. The diurnal system of night to day is the very first timekeeping system. This is why the Shar system is a day count system. 432,000 turnings of the stars, or Shars, is merely 1,200 years, which makes sense of the entire Anunnaki timeline. So here we have, in eschatology concerning the last days, the end of time, Judgment Day is the very last deal. The Bible never concerns itself with years, never has. So that's Jude 6. Now, observe that the angels who sinned with women are imprisoned under the earth in the Ethiopic Enoch text, as also in our text here in 18:7, chapter 18, verse 7. On the other hand, the angels who sinned through lust for empire are prisoners in the second heaven. So what the commentator is doing is allowing you to understand that when Enoch was taken through the first heaven, through the clouds, into an ocean in the sky, beyond, and in that ocean he found suspended these prisoners, these angels that are here suspended, being held in reserve for the great day of the Lord, Judgment Day. These are the ones from the heavenly rebellion, when 1/3 of the stars of heaven rebelled with the dragon against the Creator, long before Adam and Eve's story narrative began. This is a different body. These are not the ones who lain with human women and gave birth to heroes, mighty men which were of renown, the Nephilim. Totally different group here. The fathers of the Nephilim were imprisoned below the earth. These are way up in the sky. And that's what the dark satellite is about. The dark satellite is a prison. In my dark satellite videos and in my book, Anunnaki Homeworld, I have a chapter on the dark satellite where I cite whole passages from Charles Burgoyne, Christian mystic from the 1870s and 80s, who wrote about the dark satellite. He called it the dark satellite, and he explained that very ancient evil entities that hate the rest of humanity are imprisoned on that object. And every time on that calendar, on the timeline of the dark satellite, they have great influence over the affairs of the world. They can even escape to the world. So it's very compelling material to see bits and pieces of that here in this book of the Secrets of Enoch. So these angels wished to form a kingdom of their own, and they were imprisoned. Their prince was Satanael, the adversary. They are in the second heaven. This emendation is necessary. When the angels of the fifth heaven rebelled, they were cast down to the second heaven and imprisoned there. The angels asked Enoch to intercede for them, exactly as in Ethiopic Enoch, chapter 13, verse 4. They besought me to draw up a petition that they might find forgiveness. This is what we find in the Book of Giants, found among the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The giants and the fathers of the Nephilim come forward and they beg Enoch to petition God that all their sons won't be killed in the coming flood. And in the Ethiopic Enoch, it calls them watchers, the watchers of heaven. All right. Of the taking of Enoch to the third heaven, chapter 8, verse 1. And these men took me from thence and brought me to the third heaven and placed me in the midst of a garden, a place such as has never been known for the goodliness of its appearance. That's really interesting that the Garden of Paradise is above. It's above the sky, above the clouds, above the firmament, an ocean bigger in the sky that's way bigger than the one on the world. It's above the prison of the stars, the great vast darkness called the deep. It's above all that. There's a paradise up there. Now, I believe that there's been much confusion when the Jewish redactors began copying all these texts, because the ancient Edens were walled enclosures. This is what a garden is, a walled enclosure called a paradise. So it's I think there's much confusion, and that they invented the story of the Garden of Eden being a place in the world, when it's actually a place that's outside the construct. And I saw all the trees of beautiful colors and their fruits ripe and fragrant, and all kinds of food which they produced, springing up with delightful fragrance. Remember, Enoch was taken from the surface of the earth and goes straight up and sees all these things. He went up to the garden. And I said, what a very blessed place is this. And those men spoke unto me. This place, O Enoch, is prepared for the righteous, who endure every kind of attack in their lives, from those who afflict their souls, who turn away their eyes from unrighteousness and accomplish a righteous judgment, and also give bread to the hungry, and clothe the naked, and raise the fallen, and assist the orphans who are oppressed, and who walk without blame before the face of the Lord, and serve him only. For them, this place is prepared as an eternal inheritance. Remember Jesus' words, in my Father's house are many mansions. So what is being described here is not a place of reward for the religious, but it's a place of reward basically for what Revelation begins. And to he who overcometh, I will give him a white stone with a new name. And to he who overcometh, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. A pillar was somebody who possessed divine knowledges. That's what the symbol of the pillar was in ancient Babylonia. So we have here the exact same concept expressed right here. It's not about religion. It's not about faith. It's not about what you believe in. There is no requirement anywhere in here for you to have a specific belief about Jesus, about God, none of that. Everything here you see is about personal conduct. Religion is dungeon programming. The truth about what we need to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is the whole law. And it's summed up beautifully right here. Book of the Secrets of Enoch. Okay. Let's see. To which the sun goes out by the eastern gates, according to the number of the days, 365, and the quarter of a day. The reason I'm drawing this to your attention is because statements like this are chronographical. This statement identifies this text in two ways. Either this text is very ancient and it was redacted after 713 BC, when the year changed from 360 days to 365, or this text is much newer, like 500, 600, or 700 years after the change in the year, which is a sufficient amount of time for them to have totally forgotten the 360-day year. Or it could have been just a pure old Jewish redaction, because in the 2nd and 1st century BC, it was widely known all over the world that the year was 365.24 days. So this dates the text as being post 8th century BC. But in the lunar year, there are 354 days, making 12 months of 29 days. And there remain 11 days over, which belong to the solar circle of the whole year. So here is basically a 2,000-year-old reference to the year being 12 months. In my own research, ancient Egypt had a 12-month calendar. Sumer had a 12-month calendar. The Chinese had a 12-month calendar. Africa, the Mediterranean world, in Europa, and all of Asia only knew a 12-month calendar. But in the ancient Americas, there was a 13-month calendar. And what was very important to that 13-month calendar was the number 52, which is the prime denominator of the entire Mayan long count calendar, which is 52 centuries, or 100 years 52 times over. How do we know this? Because the Mayan long count is 1,872,000 days. It's divisible by 52 perfectly. So anyway, that's I just wanted to throw that in there because a lot of people are trying to say that recently the calendar was changed. No, it was not. Almost the entire ancient world recognized a 12-month calendar. Now, there's been 12 months. Now, 13 constellations does not mean a 12-month calendar. It means 13 constellations. The year was still divided. Almost every civilization divided the calendar about 30 days, 12 times over for 360 days. All right. So they arose obviously from a marginal gloss. The writer in this chapter does not get beyond the Metonic cycle, whereas the great cycle of 532 years is produced by multiplying together the Metonic cycle of 19 years and the solar cycle of 28 years. This great cycle is called the Dionysian or the Great Paschal period. The reason I'm drawing attention to this is because I have a video that explains where you got your modern calendar. The Anno Domini calendar was basically a psyop by the Roman Catholic Church. A Roman Catholic agent invented that calendar to cover up a 552-year cycle. We know that as the Phoenix cycle. It's divisible by 138. 138 times 4 is 552 years. We have old documents from the Roman Catholic Church where they admit that during the Great Justinian Darkness period of 25 years, they modified the calendar to do away with the older 552-year calendar and replace it with the Paschal system of 532 years. And in this way, Dionysius was able to calculate back using the new cycle. He calculated back and determined that Jesus was born in 4 BC. This is what he thought. So he modified his calendar appropriately. 4 BC was the birth of Jesus. So the Anno Domini calendar was created, but he was in error. He was wrong. The Phoenix phenomenon, and the only time in all of world history when the Nemesis X object was in the sky at the same time Phoenix was here in the same year, was the year 522 AD. And I've shown this. This is 4 years before the calendar in 526 was altered to what we call the Anno Domini calendar, which the whole world goes by today. And the records that I show in my video prove that the Roman Catholic Church invented the calendar we're on today so you wouldn't know about the Phoenix cycle. Now, let's see. Okay. As it includes all the variations in respect of the new moons and the Dominical letters, it is consequently a period in which Easter and all the movable and unmovable feasts would occur on the same day of the week and month as in the corresponding year of the preceding cycle. This cycle was first proposed by Victorius of Aquitaine about 457 AD. It is obvious that any reference to such a cycle here is an intrusion. The correct academic term is interpolation. It is introduced into the text deceitfully by a scribe later, trying to make it look like it's a part of the original text. So, let's see, the fourth part, explanation of the leap year, on which account these change the seasons of the year. Okay, I've already made my point here. Let's move on. Excuse me. All right. All right, real quick, let me check my chat. All right, we're moving right along. Clowns and clones, you're right. Pamela Swan, woohoo! Yeah, 532 is the Paschal cycle, but it's the one that was invented to cover up the 552-year cycle, the Phoenix cycle that was known by the ancients. A lot has been done by the Roman Catholic Church to hide the Phoenix cycle and to make you believe that the story of the Phoenix is about a ridiculous bird that flies to Egypt periodically and then burns up in fire and then is reborn from its own ashes. A totally ludicrous, dumb tradition that came out of the Bennu bird traditions of Egypt. All right, we're going back. I'm going back into sharing. So moving right along, Enoch ascends into the fifth heaven. All right. So we now have chapter 18 verse 1, Book of the Secrets of Enoch. The men took and brought me up into the fifth heaven, and I saw there many hosts, not to be counted, called Gregori, and their appearance was like men, and their size was greater than that of the giants. And their countenances were withered, and their lips are always silent, and there was no service in the fifth heaven. In other Jewish texts, we find Gregori as the fathers of the giants. Remember, there is no Jewish recognition whatsoever in the traditions of the vapor canopy, in the evidence of the vapor canopy. To the Jewish mindset, the giants, the titans, they were the direct result of angels having sex with human women. But we don't find that. An exegetical analysis of the Greek traditions, Greek mythology, of the writings of Sanchuniathon, Hesiod, Homer, when we dissect this material, we find just the opposite. We find that the gods were human. Everything about them were human. About the Anunnaki, anything you study from the Babylonian cuneiform and the Akkadian, you find that everything that was known of the prior Sumerians was human. All the statues, all the busts, all the faces, all the images of the Anunnaki are always bearded humans. This is what we find. But when the Jews were steadily rewriting all these traditions and histories and inserting their viewpoints into all these texts, they changed these things to giant. The giants are now the result of angels having sex with human women. This is not what we had. This is not where giantism comes from. We don't have that. In fact, the Watchers were sexually compatible with humans because they're both humans. One's technologically advanced, probably Caucasians, and they come among indigenous populations and they have sex with those people and they produce, and through exogamy or whatever, they turn around and produce offspring. And this is the origin of the traditions, but the traditions were preserved not by the invaders, but by the invaded. And these are how these legends and traditions were preserved, by word of mouth over long periods of time. And then when these things are committed to writing, their embellishments are added. And then the Jews come around and basically rewrite everybody's traditions and everybody's stories and everybody's histories. And for about a 900-year period of time, it was the wandering Jew. It was the Jewish scribe, the origin of modern day publishing enterprises. These are the people who basically rewrote everything into their through Jewish filters and produced the histories of the world we have today. And in their version, the giants came from sex with angels and human, but that's not how it happened. 1902, 2 men grew 2 inches just because they were exposed to ambient radiation from a volcano. In 1902, a Phoenix year. And we already know, by virtue of many people's research, several books written about vapor canopies, animals, reptiles, amphibians, megafauna, marsupials, plants, they all grow to huge sizes. Have humans ever been huge? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. We've got 17 and 18-inch footprints in, just like we have three-toed sloth footprints and mammoth hoof prints. We fossilized. We have all that. We have every bit of that. Of course they were here. The reason we don't have a whole lot of bones is because many of them have been destroyed. But also for about 3,000 years among the basically the Wiccan class, females would use the bones of giants for the magical properties in medicines. Yeah, anytime it was known that a giant was buried somewhere, they used to break into those sarcophagi and take those bones out and go give them to the the local female shamans or the witches or whatever, and they would make all kinds of powerful unguents and potions with the ground up bones of giants. As my book Giants on Ancient Earth reveals in the very first chapter, there are many historical accounts in ancient texts of kings during different regnal lists of people just building things. And all of a sudden they found a sarcophagus or a tomb or a crypt, and they found a giant human skeleton, sometimes with armor and weapons and all that. So, and then we have one account, I believe it was Tatian. Somebody recorded, I can't remember which one. I cited it in my book, but a Roman emperor was so impressed with how gigantic this human was, like 13 foot tall, that he ordered his own workmen to reseal the tomb and give him the respect he was due and rebury it. And they built a Roman building over it. Yeah. So the Watchers rebelled against God. Here it is right here. Let's look at this more closely. The Watchers rebelled against God before the angels were tempted to sin with the daughters of men. In other words, we have here the agents of the original revolt in heaven, the Satans, the adversaries, and their leader is naturally named Satanael, the adversary of God. These existed as evil agencies before the fall of the angels. For in Ethiopic Enoch, the guilt of the latter consisted in becoming subject to Satan. So that's how they fell subject to Satan, because they had made a mistake. The myth here, however, varies somewhat from that of Ethiopic Enoch. The leaders in the Ethiopic Enoch are not Satans, but watchers, like their followers. In the Ethiopic Enoch, however, we have an account which harmonizes with our text. There we see that the superior angels had rebelled before the creation of Adam, that they had tempted Eve and brought about the fall of the angels in the days of Jared. Jared, Arid, means to descend. Thus, in the Ethiopic Enoch and here, the leaders of the angels who fell in Jared's days are Satans. This is really interesting because I don't see a fall from heaven here. I don't see anything but a technologically advanced culture of humans appeared in the days of Jared when they descended Mount Ardon as the Watchers. Why were they called the Watchers? Because Asiatic peoples are always overrepresenting Caucasians by making their eyes owlish and round. And this is precisely what you see in the Sumerian statuary. Just the opposite is true when Semitic and Caucasian people try to represent Asiatic people, Oriental people in their artwork. They over accentuate in their artwork, and instead of creating the beautiful almond eyes of the Oriental with the special epicanthic fold, instead they just put two slits to represent the Asian. We see this in ancient art and even modern art. Both cultures are guilty of over accentuating the features of the other culture. All right, let's move on. And they entered into dealings on the side of Mount Hermon, and they saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and took unto themselves wives, and they made the earth foul with their deeds. And they acted lawlessly in all times of this age, and wrought confusion, and the giants were born, and the strangely tall men. And there was much wickedness. This story is the Jewish version of what happened in 3439 BC. We know that date because that is the Genesis date for Arid. It is the 456th year of the pre-flood world when Jared was alive. So, the father of Enoch. The Jewish version of what was going on is the exact opposite of the Sumerian version. The Sumerian version has the Anunna, led by Enki, appear 432,000 shars before the Great Flood. Well, we already know in the Archaics that the Great Flood was 2239 BC in the month of May. So confident, willing to debate anybody about that. So much chronological data to show that the Deucalion Noahic flood was 2239 BC that it's irrefutable. I have so many videos about that date and how we can chronologically get to that from many different species of analysis. However, 432,000 shars sounds like a lot, and Billy Carson's going to tell you it's 432,000 years. Why? Because he's a copyist and he thinks Zechariah Sitchin was telling him the truth. But it's only 432,000 turnings of the shars. Under the 360-day count system, the lunisolar system, it's only 12 centuries, 1,200 years. Is it a coincidence that 1,200 years before 2239 BC is precisely 3439 BC, the 456th year before the flood? Did I just make all that up? No. The arithmetic, by two different species of analysis, identifies the exact year the Watchers and the Anunna descended a mountain and appeared. The older Sumerian version says the Anunna appeared as benefactors. They taught mankind canal works, infrastructure, herbalism. They taught them agriculture. They taught them equestrian, all the equestrian, metallurgy, astronomy, the art of writing. Does the archaeological record comport? Yes, it does. Anthropologists will tell you it is a mystery. I have many, many citations in my Chronicon of the anthropological books, the archaeological books I cite all of these that tell you the same thing. They don't know why, but in the 35th century BC, 3439 BC, in the 35th century BC, Neolithic people who had been living that way for thousands of years unchanged, suddenly within 100 years were building massive metropolises, urban planning, human explosion was everywhere, technology kept up with it, writing is introduced, cuneiform, it all exploded. The Sumerian version is the original version. The Anunna came from underground, exited a mountain. And when they came down, they were tall, they were bearded, just like they look in the Sumerian text and on the reliefs and on the pillars and on the prisms. And when they appeared, they were all males. They had survived a cataclysm with their infrastructure intact. And when they appeared, they took females from the local indigenous people who were petite and small and black-eyed and black straight-haired, olive skin. And the children of these unions were different than the people themselves. This is the origin of the Nephilim. But the Anunna didn't really hang around. They always remained distant. They stayed in their walled enclosures called Edens. These were surface facilities that acted as way stations for those who went out on their hunting parties and all that stuff out there on the surface of the world, because the true Anunna civilization is underground. The Edens served as outposts where they did trade with the locals, and some of that trade involved the daughters of men. The same thing that happened in 1962. For those of you who don't know, 1962 began Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind. We've always had all kinds of, maybe the third kind. Close Encounters were one of them. 1962 began an alliance with the underworlders now getting government permission from the surface world to abduct human females for whatever reason they did. And then the underworld and the surface world in 1962 began working together to put out all the necessary information to get everybody on the surface world to think that these females were being abducted by UFOs. I got videos that talk about that in my Anunna files. So the same exact story from the ancient world is unfolding today. The Jewish version of what happened in 3439 BC is the exact opposite of the truth. It's the exact opposite. When the Anunna appeared, they appeared as benefactors. The Sumerians only spoke highly of their benefactors, spoke highly of the Anunnaki, the Anunna. They spoke highly of them. They gave them the bread of life. They gave them the waters of life. They shared with them the knowledges of the past, present, and future through what was called the tablets of destinies. They they venerated Enki and they venerated Anu and Enlil, and the Sumerians called themselves the black-headed people. They were the indigenous population of the Euphrates-Tigris region, but the Anunna were foreigners who had come from somewhere else, and they were very tall. And in the statuary of the Sumerian, what Leonard Woolley excavated, we have them in museums today. Everybody's seen them. All the statues are alabaster, because it was the only material that they could work with back then that could represent white-skinned people. Their eyes are always lapis lazuli. They use lapis lazuli in the eyes. Why? Because it was the only mineral available to a valley-dwelling civilization to represent blue eyes. They were always bearded. This was the Anunnaki. They're not aliens. They were humans from somewhere else. The Jewish version tells you that gods or angels came and had sex with human females, and then the Nephilim were created, who were giants. It's not what happened. It's not what happened. Very tall Caucasians interbred with a short Iberic stock type people who were dark-eyed, dark raven, dark hair, olive skin, indigenous river valley population. It's the same population in the Tigris Euphrates that Thor Heyerdahl found in the Melampides of the ancient Greeks' descriptions of the early Egyptians. The exact same people of black eyes, black hair, straight black hair, and olive skin are also the same people of the Indus Valley civilization of Pakistan and India, the exact same ancient people of the Yangtze River Valley civilization of ancient China, the exact same people of the Urubamba Valley of South America. These are the reed boat people. Every civilization had these specific reeds that they could make rafts and ships out of, and they were ocean going. How do we know this? Because Thor Heyerdahl proved it in the 1940s and 50s. Some of you know what I'm talking about. But I digress. We have a technologically advanced people after a reset. How do we know it was a reset? Because what happened in 3439 BC, I've shown you in my book, Anunnaki Homeworld, and in multiple videos, and in my book, Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse, 3439 BC, the 456th year of the pre-flood world, was the exact year the Nemesis X object appeared for the very first time in the historical record. And in the book of Jasher, it says basically that 1/3 of the entire world's population died. And the civilization was centered around the Gihon. The Gihon in all the ancient maps, and all the ancient cartographers in the old text, and even in Book of Jasher, the Gihon River, is the Nile River in Egypt. That's going to become very important. Remember, the Gihon River is the origin of the story of the angels having sex with the daughters of men, the watchers coming out. Remember, the Sumerians acknowledged that the Anunna were from somewhere else. Somewhere else. I'm going to tell you now, one of those places was northern Egypt, pre-flood Egypt, where the great metropolis of Sippar was. Sippar means the city of books, knowledge. Sippar, over 1,000 years later, had become basically Egyptianized into Saqqara, and then later it was Saqqara, northern Egypt. Okay, and they made the earth foul with their deeds, and they acted lawlessly in all times of this age, and wrought confusion, and the giants were born, and the strangely tall men, and there were much wickedness. Yeah, all that's Jewish redactionism. The Jewish scribes knew from all the texts of the Alexandrian library that giants existed in the ancient world, and they were trying to find a way to describe how they were. What they never took into consideration was the vapor canopy period, or they did take it into consideration because, as I've shown in Archaix, pretty much every reference, not every reference, but many of the references to the Phoenix phenomenon in ancient times were from Jewish sources, and they were cleverly veiled and hid. And we only found them by taking a calculator out and going 138 years through history, and then learning what happened on those episodes. And we found out, wow, these people have been knowing about this. It's in their legends, it's in their traditions. Hell, the Book of Genesis is the pre-flood world's 1,656 years. Who wrote that? Who did that? That's divisible by 138. And it starts with a cataclysm, the Adam and Eve reset. Yeah, it's not a creation. It was a creation. It was a creation story because the survivors thought that a new heavens and a new earth had been created. And it essentially had, because Adam and Eve's story is a reset story. 1,656 years later, as the pre-flood world ends, the antediluvian world ends because a vapor canopy collapsed. Was a vapor canopy there the entire 1,656 years? Absolutely not. I have believed in the past that the entire pre-flood world was a vapor canopy, but I no longer hold to that. When my final Chronicon came out, I was able to assess much of the research that I had done a long time ago that I had totally forgotten about. And I look at it, and to me, it looks like there were two separate vapor canopies in the pre-flood world. Two separate ones. And the second one caused the Great Flood. How long it endured was about 400 years. Because we have a terrible Phoenix phenomenon event that happened, I believe, 414 years before the flood. Amazingly, that one was actually documented by Zechariah Sitchin himself, although he didn't know it was the Phoenix, but he did date it, and he did describe the darkening of the sun. So let's move on to... I spent too much time on that one. All right. This verse is clearly an interpolation. It is not found either in B or Sokolov. Furthermore, throughout the rest of the book, only 7 heavens are mentioned or implied. The term he's talking about that was introduced that is not a part of the original text, I'm singling this out because the term is the Hebrew Mazaloth. Mazaloth is the Hebrew name for the 12 signs of the zodiac. This man, in the 1896, when he translated the Slavonic Enoch into English in his own commentary, he notes that in the translator's notes of the Slavonic version, it was already noted that the Hebrew word describing the zodiac was inserted into the text where it did not formally belong. How did they know this? Because multiple copies of Slavonic Enoch have been found. Somebody was playing dirty, and they introduced Maslow. Why is this important to the Archaics research? Because I've showed you guys in a prior presentation solid evidence all the way through that someone has been very busy inserting this word, Maslow, into a lot of text, trying to get you to believe that the zodiac is old, and it's not at all. The constellations that were important in ancient Babylon and Sumer and Akkad and Assyria aren't anything like the constellations of the Greeks, starting with, Aries, Taurus and Aries. And this is the age of Taurus, this is the age of Aries, we're about to enter the age of Pisces, is all BS. This is another reason Mr. Hancock doesn't want to debate. Yeah, always trying to date all these ancient structures and megaliths and temples by using the zodiac. Well, we know this was built at this time because this temple points this way. And at that time, it would have been the age of Leo. Man, they didn't have a zodiacal clock. All that's modern invention imposed upon the ancient world. In order to push all this archaeoastronomy BS on the population, they have to practice a lot of exclusions. And one of those exclusions is ignoring the Archaics data. 100%. Let's see. Moving on next. They shall distribute the books of thy writing to their children's children, and from generation to generation, and from nation to nation. What he's talking about is that before the flood, Noah was instructed to take the libraries from the city of Shurappak and Sapar and gather them and preserve them somewhere so they could be found after the flood. This is the same story as Manu in the ancient Vedic story, in the Hindu stories of Manu. And I will give thee Enoch, my messenger, the great captain Michael, for their writings and for the writings of thy fathers, Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalaleel, and Jared, thy father. And I shall not require them till the last age, for I have instructed my two angels, Archaix and Patriarch, whom I have put upon the earth as their guardians. And I have ordered them in time to guard them, that the account of what I shall do in thy family may not be lost in the deluge to come. Well, now. There's a little bit to unpack here. Remember, in the book of Jasher, Enoch receives divine instructions that he passes off to the Sethites. Enoch is not a part of the construction project, but he passes off the divine instructions and the Sethites build something. We know it's the Great Pyramid Complex. How do we know? Because every element of Enoch's life is mirrored in ancient Egyptian Coptic story of King Surid. Enoch ruled over 130 kings and princes, and he was an architect, a mathematician, astronomer, and a prophet. But so was Surid, who ruled over 130 nomes of Egypt, and specifically is mentioned by the Egyptian Copts as the builder of the Great Pyramid. In both versions, the pyramid preserves the past, present, and the future. Same as the E-Kur that possessed the Tablets of Destinies in the Sumerian version, which is the past, present, and future. Enoch, it says right here, all the writings of the pre-flood world. And listen, I shall not require them till the last day. Process this. Enoch is told that all the writings and all the knowledge of the pre-flood world is going to be put somewhere. Everything. But God tells Enoch, I will not require these writings until the last age. For I have instructed my two angels, Archaix and Patriarch, whom I have put upon the earth as their guardians. There are two great pyramids at Giza, and I have ordered them in time to guard them, that the account of what I shall do in thy family may not be lost in the deluge to come. This is precisely the story of Surid in the Egyptian Coptic texts, preserved by Al-Makrizi Masaudi 1,000 years ago. I've cited those in my book, Lost Scriptures of Giza. This is the exact story retold from a different way. The Great Pyramid Complex was built to preserve the past, present, and future for a future generation, but it was specifically constructed to withstand the force of the Great Flood that they knew was coming. They knew that the Great Pyramids constructed in such a fashion, the way they would last through all the epochs of humanity, so what they contain can be preserved and used for a future. What information could be so important to the human family that such a massive architectural project not only be built, but so much misinformation be released about it, and yet it possess information that is so integral to the human family? What could it be? I've already shown in the measurements of the Great Pyramid that the pyramid's function is Exodus. That's the story of the Old Testament. That's the measurements of the Great Pyramid. My Archaix veterans, you already know. I don't even have to tell you anymore. You already know about the apothem of the Great Pyramid and the internal arrangements. The rectilinear dimensions of the Great Pyramid show us world history timelines like no other structure in the world. It's amazing. and they scream Exodus. What is Exodus? Enoch story is the story that is preserved and hidden inside the Great Pyramid for a last days generation to decode. What happened to Enoch? And Enoch was taken from the earth into the heavens to the paradise above. Enoch made his exodus from the earth. In the book of Genesis says, and Enoch walked with God and he was no more. He was gone. Exited the construct. That's the story of Enoch. All right. Take these books of the writings of your father and read them, and in them ye shall learn all the works of the Lord. There have been many books from the beginning of creation, and shall be to the end of the world. So here's another passage. The harmony of the course of the world is brought about through its separate 364 world stations. These world stations, or thrones, as in our text, are the 364 different positions occupied by the sun on the 364 days of the year. Now, we already know the year is 365.24. So why are the Jews so insistent over and over of saying the year is 364 days? We find this in many texts. I'm going to tell you why. It's because they knew that the ancient system venerated the 52-year cycle. This is what the Olmec and the Mayan long count systems were predicated on. Divisions, the calendar round is what it's called. This is the Aztec calendar of 52-year periods. Remember, the Aztecs sacrificed. They had one person they would sacrifice in a 52-year period to thwart the disaster. And then when no disaster happened, they would have to hold a festival. 52 years was the calendar round. The entire 1,872,000 days of the Mayan long count is divisible by 52 centuries. So this is what this reference is. 364 is divisible by 52. In the Toltec versions of the Great Flood, we find the number 50, multiples of 52 between the Great Flood and the Tower of Babel story. Because the Toltecs remember a tower story, but theirs involved giants. Then the Toltecs also remembered a time when they left the old world and appeared in the Americas, and that too is divisible by 52. And I've showed this in my Chronicon. These are in Chronicon. These Toltec timelines, they're in Chronicon. And every single number the Toltecs throw out is divisible by 52. But I swear to you, yea, that there has not been even a man in his mother's womb for whom a place has not been prepared for every soul. And a measure is fixed, how long a man shall be tried in this world. O my children, be not deceived. There is a place prepared there for every soul of man. I thought that was pretty good. I like that little passage. Oh, here's one. Cursed is he who looks to make use of another man's labor. Uh-oh. Sextus Medicus maintained that the souls of brutes and of men were alike. Listen to me. He's talking about animals. Hence, it was generally believed that the souls of men could pass into brutes. He's quoting Porphyry. While Plato indeed went further and derived the souls of all brutes ultimately from those of men through a process of deterioration. So basically, the theory here is that if you live an effed up life as a human, you get a couple shots before you come back as an animal. That's the belief they're talking about right here. Let's go deeper into that because there's some really profound stuff here. Even in Christian times, 2000, 15 centuries ago, 2000, animals were credited with intelligence. conscience, responsibility, as well as with passions, vices, and virtues of mankind. Citing a book from 1892, they were accordingly solemnly tried, and advocates were assigned at the public expense to them to plead their case. What's being described here is when an animal was found to be doing something it wasn't supposed to be doing, in some cultures, they would hold a trial. And because the animal can't speak the language, they would assign an attorney to defend and speak for the animal. It's crazy. Thus, moles in 824 AD, a sow in 1324 AD, a cock in 1474 AD, snails in 1487 were duly tried and condemned. They were also occasionally subjected to torture, and their cries were regarded as a confession of guilt. That sounds like the Inquisition. Even as late as 1531, a book was written by Chasset to discuss the lawfulness of trying animals judicially and the legitimate methods of procedure. You thought liberals were crazy today. So, the day that Enoch ascends and walks with God and is removed from the construct, and the men assembled to the number of 2,000 and came to the place Akuzan, where Enoch was and his sons. And the elders of the people came together and made obeisance and kissed Enoch and said to him, Enoch, our father. Anyway, I'm not going on with that narrative. This is to show you that the place that Enoch ascended is Akuzan. I have shown an etymological breakdown of the roots of this word. I have shown you that Akuzan in the law scriptures of Giza is the origin of Giza. Remember the Gihon River. We've already found out that that during the actual history that the Sumerian texts are talking about, it wasn't even in the Near East. Pre-cataclysm, before the flood, 432,000 turnings of the stars before the flood was 12 centuries, 34, 39 BC, the 35th century BC, when agriculture and urban planning just exploded everywhere. Cities just appeared everywhere. The capital was Egypt. The capital was Akuzan, where the Great Pyramids were. These two giant witnesses that preserved the past, present, and the future, that were specifically designed to survive cataclysms so that in the last days, mankind would be able to decipher how they can make Exodus. It's all right there. When Enoch had discoursed with the people, the Lord sent a darkness upon the earth, and there was gloom, and it hid those men standing with Enoch. And the angels hasted and took Enoch and carried him to the highest heaven, where the Lord received him and set him before his face. And the darkness departed from the earth, and there was light. What is the darkness? It's the Phoenix phenomenon. Over and over and over, I've showed you guys in all these ancient texts, Enoch, the Great Pyramid, and the Phoenix are all in tandem. They all correlate, and they're in all these stories in different variants. The Great Pyramid of Egypt, the Phoenix phenomenon, and the architect Enoch. They're all together in all these stories. And the people saw and did not understand how Enoch was taken, and they glorified God, and they who had seen such things departed to their houses. Concerning Enoch, he wrote down the descriptions of all the creation which the Lord had made, and he wrote 366 books and gave them to his sons. Remember, the writings of the pre-flood world were preserved in the architecture of the Great Pyramid. The writings aren't historical writings. They're arithmetic, they're measurements, they're rectilinear distances in different units that the Great Pyramid acknowledges, like the pyramid inch. Why is the number 366 important? It's a code that identifies the Great Pyramid. How do we know this? Because the Great Pyramid is precisely 5,448 inches high. At 481 feet, it has been measured all the way back to the 1870s. Sir Flinders Petrie, Flinders Petrie measured it. Engineer David Davidson measured it. It is known. It is 203 courses of blocks going all the way up to precisely 5,448 inches. But it's a flat surface on the top, and the casing blocks, which are 100 inches thick, have been removed. They've been removed. Measurements of the apothegm, the distance, the sloping distance from base to geometrical apex, where there's a missing capstone. If a capstone was placed on the pyramid, that inch right there would be precisely the 5,814th inch. The Great Pyramid is designed to be 5,814 inches, but it's not that high because the chief cornerstone has not been placed upon it. But when it is placed upon it, it will be exactly 366 inches high. That's how tall the one cornerstone is. It is the largest block of the entire structure, and it's the one at the top. And all the millions of blocks below it, there are millions, merely support that one, the chief cornerstone. The Great Pyramid is the monument of man, and every soul that's going to make Exodus is represented by a single stone. Anyway, that's interesting. The 366 calls it 366 books, but you have to understand, a book is merely a container of knowledge. When the 366 books are added, the 366 inches, that's the 204th course of blocks. Why is that important? Because Esdras, the Greek original of Ezra, which is in the Old Testament. In the apocryphal books, it's called 1st and 2nd Esdras. And what do we read? We read that the prophet Ezra learned that the past, present, and future was hidden and preserved in 204 books that were revealed by the divine. Why is that? What does that have to do with this? It has everything to do with it, because Ezra was talking about the last days. And he said he got his information from divine books that numbered 204. The Great Pyramid is 203 levels of blocks, all the way up to a flat surface where the chief cornerstone forms the 204th block. The 204th block is 366 inches high. You can see it. If you look at my chart, you can see it all perfectly. It's really profound. And for those of you who don't know, even as late as the 1880s, there were already books about the Great Pyramid explaining that in biblical Gematria, there is a verse in Isaiah chapter 19 that says that God built an altar in the midst of the land of Egypt and yet at the border thereof. And there's specific information about this altar that was built. It's really interesting because in the book of Jubilees, in the book of Jasher, we find out that God, when Adam died, Adamu, the sun darkened. And after the sun returned, God himself had built on the earth, at the middle of the earth, he specifically says the middle of the earth, an altar honoring Adam. But Adam wasn't a man. Adam is a race. Adamu, the human race. It is very specific in the book of Jasher. It's very specific in the apocryphal records. It's very specific in the book of Enoch, that this place was the middle of the earth where Enoch ascended and where Akuzan was later built, the Great Pyramid Complex. Middle of the earth. Why is that interesting? Because the middle of the earth is exactly where the altar was built, according to Isaiah chapter 19. The gematria, I don't know if it's gematria or gematria. The value The numeric value of those Hebrew letters is 5,448. That's the geometrical value of that verse in the Bible. I'm not making this up. It's not even my discovery. I cited in Chronicon and tell you these are books from the 1880s that talk about this. That the 5,448 inch height of the Great Pyramid today is matched in the verse in Isaiah chapter 19 that talks about the altar in the midst of the land of Egypt and yet at the border thereof. How could you be in the middle of Egypt and yet at the border? Because the word for border is Giza. Check it all out, guys. My Law Scriptures of Giza book breaks all this down and shows you the sources of the material. Appendix. The following fragment of the Melchizedekian literature was found by Professor Sokolov in the chief manuscript, on which he has based his text. Now, this is really interesting. This is an addition to the Book of the Secrets of Enoch. It's very interesting to those who have been following the Archaix research. You're going to see something in here. I've showed you guys that the ancient Achaean Noah was Nereus. His daughters were the Nereids. These are prefixed with the root word Ner, N-E-R, which means 600. The Anunnaki Ner calendar was 600 years. The Anunna timeline. I have many presentations about the Ner system. It's an ancient calendar of the Anunnaki. So Noah was 600 years old when the Great Flood happened, according to the Book of Genesis. And in the Achaean version, the survivor of the flood was Nereus, the old man of the sea. It has the number 600 in it. His daughters, the Nereids. So look what we find here in this text. Before the flood, one of the Sethites was named Ner. Call Ner, here it is. Call Ner, the son of thy son Lamech, the second, born after Noah, and clothe him in the robes of thy consecration, and place him by my altar. And tell him all that shall be in his days, because the time of the destruction of the whole world draws nigh, and of every man and every living thing upon the earth. So here in this old Jewish tradition, the word Ner is associated to the Great Flood. Isn't that amazing? The Great Flood was on the Anunnaki Ner system of 600-year periods, mentioned by Flavius Josephus as the Great Year, every 600 years. For in his days there shall be a very great confusion upon the earth, because a man has been envious of his neighbor, and people have become inflamed against people, and nation stirs up war against nation, and all the earth is filled with foulness and blood and every kind of evil. And moreover, in addition, they deserted their maker and have bowed down to vain gods and to the firmament of heaven, and the course of the earth and the waves of the sea. And the adversary is multiplied and rejoices in his deeds to my great vexation. And all the earth changes its form. So we go down here. He just talks about why the world, God's going to destroy the world. And we get to the bottom of the page and it says, let the Lord God do according to his will. And now, Methuselah, accomplish thou all things which the Lord enjoined thee. And Methuselah called Ner, the son of Lamech, the younger brother of Noah, and clothed him in the robes of the priesthood before the face of all the people, and placed him at the head of the altar, and taught him all that he was to be among the people. Guess who this guy is? The ancient Jews associated Ner, the ancient Anunnaki calendar of 600-year periods that Noah was named after. Ner is the origin of Melchizedek. And he, Melchizedek, shall be a priest and a king in the place Akuzan, that is to say, in the middle of the earth where Adam was created. There shall at last be his grave. In the Jewish tradition, We link Enoch, the Great Pyramid, the Anunnaki nerve system, the Anunna, to the middle of the earth, the Great Pyramid, Giza, northern Egypt. It's all the elements are right there in one area. And that, my friends, ends my presentation. Let's see here. 1 hour and 54 minutes. Man, I'm getting pretty good at that. I keep going through these books, guys. I keep finding more and more stuff that I've already published 20 years ago. Yeah, my 2006 Law Scriptures of Giza was published. All this data was already in there, but I didn't have these particulars from this text. But all these concepts I already had down there. The more I keep reading older and older translations and text, I keep finding exactly what I'd already discovered before and published. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to show you what I found in Pliny the Elder. It's awesome. Absolutely awesome. So links are in the description box, guys, for my Chronicon. I was emotional when I got this. I was so impressed. Everything I'm telling you is in here too. It's huge. Massive book. Man, it's just massive. Yeah, guys. There's no air on these between these lines. There's no air between these lines, guys. This ain't a J Dreamer's book. This ain't a book by Billy Carson. This ain't copy and paste Facebook educated stuff. This is source back material. Oh, and by the way, 1,400 different texts were all cited to produce this work. This is my magnum opus. And I'm really thankful that this guy that printed this up, he kept a copy and he sent me a copy. But you can get your own copy and print your own up too. One of my moderators will repost that Chronicon link. All my chart pack links. Hey, Errol. San Diego, buddy. I appreciate you guys. You know I'll go back to the comment section later. Man, I got so many irons in the fire. I got people. I'm gonna spend tomorrow. I'm gonna give y'all another video tomorrow, but it's gonna be an Archaics rewind. A good one too. My rewind videos are shorter presentations, man, bringing things back to the table you need to be aware of. But tomorrow, I have probably 40-something different people I'll be contacting by email. Those who actually listen to me and contacted me to come on my channel, that actually emailed me to my Archaix 138 Gmail account. I get it. The comment sections are absolutely packed full of you guys offering up, but that's not what I asked, because it's too much. It's too much for me to go into the comments and try to copy and paste. And many times you don't provide me the link. I don't know who you're talking about. So I specifically asked, if you want to see them on my channel, then I need the link. I need their email. I need a link to their platform. It doesn't have to be YouTube. It can be off YouTube. But I need a link to whoever they are sent to my email, because that's all I'm doing. I'm only pulling from my email. You know, I'm giving everybody a shot. I'm giving everybody a shot. Yeah, guys, this is a good one. Thank you. Thank you for liking my hat. Yeah, man. Let's see. File. So yeah, I appreciate you guys, and I'm going to go ahead and sign out. Kept it under 2 hours. That was a packed presentation, and all these little bits are going into the Archaics master file. For those of you who send me 4 terabyte drives, or drives that can contain 4 terabytes, and we'll work something out. But that's exactly what we're going to do. All these are going to my old books file. Some good stuff. Meanwhile, let me find out where in the hell my stuff. Oh, there it is. All right, guys. Till next time.